Hi, I'm Shelly from FaithX, helping you connect your faith and your business with confidence. Today I'm talking about the concept of borrowed time as it relates to our business. When people say borrowed time, they're usually referring to this idea that you have extra time, you're using extra time beyond what you're supposed to have. Like if you had a medical diagnosis that said you were only supposed to live for 3 months and now you're in your 4th month, you're on borrowed time. It gives you this feeling that you should be extra grateful, you should take advantage of what you have, of the opportunities that you have in your life that you're being presented with, because you never know when it's going to be the end, because already you've passed the point where people have predicted that it will be the end. The thing that I was thinking about is we're all on borrowed time as Christians. We were supposed to have died, right? The punishment for sins is death, but Christ stepped in and saved us from that. So from that point on, we're all on borrowed time. We should all be taking advantage of the opportunities that we have, to be grateful for the time that we have. The earth is His and everything in it. That's one of the verses, I think, in Psalms. And it just reminds me that, like, my time, my business, all the things that are going on in my life, at the very, very least, they're co-owned, me and Christ, right? Like, it's not just me. It's not just what I want to do out of my life. And it's a little bit hard for me to think about, because I like to think that I have this say over my life, that I can make my decisions and that they are my decisions to make and mine alone. And yeah, we have the ability to make decisions, but you can make decisions with other people's resources, right? Like, people, for example, investors, right? They invest other people's resources sometimes. Like, not all the money that they're buying stocks with or buying houses with is their own personal money. Some of it belongs to other people, their clients. People who manage ad campaigns, for example, are using their clients' ad money to run those campaigns. Those are examples of when we can make decisions, take action with other people's resources. We're comfortable with those ideas, but somehow it doesn't all the way come into my life. Like, I am making these decisions with a life that's not my own, right? I was bought at a price. We are God's. Psalm 100 says we are His people, the sheep of His pasture. And ignoring for a moment the idea of sheep and the discussion about people compared to sheep and all of these things. And actually, that's a really comforting example when you think about it, which I'll get into in another video. But we are His people. It means that we're not our own, right? We're not our own people. He is the one who's responsible for us. He's the one who protects us and takes care of us and provides. It doesn't mean that we're going to be problem-free the whole time, right? But it does mean that He's always going to be there. When you take ownership of something, when you say, you claim, this is my people with my name on them, these are my Christians, right? These are the people that are carrying the name of Christ. Then He's not going to just ignore us. This is His name. This is His reputation on the line. But what we decide to do with those resources, with the time that He's given us, with our lives that He actually owns, and it's not like an ownership in human history has really changed a lot of things about the way we talk about words and things like that. There's been so many bad things that we've done as a people, right? Because we are imperfect. But God is perfect. And so if He says, I've bought you, I own you, you are my people, idea of this belonging, sense of belonging, not necessarily ownership as we would own a cup or own a piece of paper or something else like that. It's not like we're objects. We are people, and we are His dearly beloved. And that sound that you just heard was my Post-it falling off the desk. But we are His people, and He loves us like He loves His children, right? That's the kind of love that we're talking about, the kind of love that goes to the death for somebody. So when we have that idea that we are on borrowed time and borrowed resources, not just because we're we're so obsessed with death because we're Christians and God died and then we die and then God saves us from the death and then we live forever, not that kind of thing. But this idea that if we are using someone else's resources, that we need to act in their best interest, right? To act with the way that they would want us to use the resources. So, for example, you wouldn't run a social media campaign for the opponent, the opposing company, or the opposing politician, or whatever, with the money that you have from your client, right? That wouldn't be good. Like, nobody would think that would be a good idea. It's kind of the same idea with us, right? You wouldn't use, it doesn't seem like a good idea to use the resources that God's given us, the things that are already His, and use them for things opposite of His purposes, whether that is intentional or unintentional. But for me, I think in particular, it needs to be more intentional. So one of the things that I was thinking about is how intentional am I? And I realized I'm not very intentional about asking God, how do you want me to use the resources that you've given me? How do you want me to use your time and my business and this life that you've given me? Because I don't think about it in those terms. I think about, okay, God, what do you want to do today? Maybe. Sometimes, more likely, I say, okay, God, can you help me with this thing that I've already decided that I want to do with my life? Because this is how I want to use my time, and everything else is a waste of time. And God may be going, no, hang on, that's not how I want to use my time, how I want you to use my time, right? That's not in the parameters of what I set up. So yeah, I still have that decision, right? Yeah, I could still make that decision to go and do this other thing, to use the funds that I have in some other way, right? But if I'm acting responsibly, and I'm acting as a representative of Christ, and I'm keeping in mind that I have this concept of borrowed time, right? That I am on borrowed time, that I am using borrowed resources, then I think the question becomes way easier to keep in mind. What do you want me to do with my day today? What do you want me to do in my business today? How can I serve you in my business today? How can I best use your resources today? And it's a question that I can ask today, this moment, my life, but I find that asking it over and over daily is very helpful, because a lot of times if I think, oh, my whole life, like, it just seems kind of big, right? It's too far away. I'm a detail-oriented person. If I think big picture for too long, I feel like, okay, well, that's just impractical now, because then I have to live in the details. So it's great to have goals. I love having goals personally. I'm a bucket list and travel blogger, so I really am all about the goals. But once I pick a goal to work on, then I break it down into tiny details and I start working on the details. And so when I pray these big things of like, how do you want me to live my life? That's great for picking those big goals, like the missions and the things that I'm really like, okay, I feel that these are the big areas that God is calling me to do. Now, how do I help in these ways, right? Like, what are the methods that I use to help those big areas? And then, that's where that today and the moments come in. How can I use the resources that you've given me today? How can I use the resources and the time, the situation that I'm in the best way possible in this moment? How can I interact with this person, this client, in this one conversation that represents you the best? And it may not be totally preachy, right? It may just be doing my job with excellence, because that's part of, like, if we're doing everything to the glory of God, if we're doing our work as to God, like, I want to give Him my best work, right? So if I'm doing my work with excellence, that can be a form of worship. That can be a way of representing Christ in a situation. So my question for you is, how can you best use your resources, best use the resources that God is letting you borrow today, in this moment, in your life? Ask yourself these questions. Just experiment with me, even for a week. Just ask yourself every day at the beginning of the day, how can I best use the resources you've given me today? And then see what happens. Wait for an answer. If you don't get one right away, then just keep an open mind throughout the day. See if things pop up, right? I think that if you say a prayer and you really mean it, that God is going to honor that prayer. Whether you can really see the things that are working or not, God will be doing something. So let's experiment with this today, and then figure out if you need to change anything about the way that you're acting or the way that you approach situations. Maybe something comes up for you in that, and then start to pray about those things. Use this as a prayer that you can either kind of reorient or to take assessment, right? Because maybe something comes up like, oh yeah, I need to be doing this. but am I? No, I'm not. And then I can figure out, okay, well, why not? What's going on? God, let's dive deeper into this situation. So that's what I have for you today. I just got off a call with one of the people I'm interviewing for the Sword and Savvy interview series, and it was an amazing interview. It was so much fun. I know that you will get tons of value from this person. If you are interested in watching these videos, these are with established Christian entrepreneurs talking about how their faith impacts their business and how their business impacts their faith. And it is amazing the value that they're giving, the things that they're sharing, both business tips for Christian entrepreneurs, things about how their faith and their business interacts, just the amazing amount of value that they're giving the resources. So I really highly encourage you to subscribe right now to this channel and hit the bell icon so you get notifications of new posts. These Sword and Savvy interview series, the first series, is going to be, first season, I mean, is going to be launching in June of this year, 2018. So be sure to subscribe because you will not want to miss these things. They're fantastic interviews, really amazing people, very generous with their time and expertise, as I said. So be sure to subscribe. More interviews, more faith and business vlogs, and I am looking forward to seeing you next week. Until then, I'm Shelly with Faith X, helping you connect your faith and your business with confidence.